So the COVID obviously challenged every institution, including Alabama A&M University, and challenged from the standpoint that the manner in which we operated and functioned, we had to change that. But the challenge was a blessing. It was a blessing in the sense that it allowed us to transition rapidly to remote education, remote learning, remote ways of operating the university. And that was fortunate because we became more efficient in the process. For example, in the financial area, they indicate that we were able to process requests much more efficiently and rapidly, doing it online than we did the old manual way that was a combination of the two. So it was a challenge in the sense of operating differently, but that challenge turned out to be an opportunity for the institution because we hastened our transition to the mode of operation that we're in. Now, clearly, as we go forward, the institution is going to be different. The post-pandemic institution is going to be a lot different than the pre-pandemic institution. Anyone who thinks that we're going to just return to the way it used to be and that was the normal process, that is not going to happen. What will occur at this juncture is that there will be some blended hybrid arrangement between the way we used to function and the way we're now functioning in the aftermath of the pandemic. The pandemic obviously created some issues relative to being sure that we kept everyone safe, including our faculty and our staff. And so we have on the campus a mandatory masking policy. And our students really have embraced that. You'll see them walking around campus and they still have their mask on because they want to be sure that they are here. They love the on-campus experience. And so they want to be here to interact with their friends. And they realize that that's not going to occur if we have an uptick in the numbers of persons that are affected by this, by COVID-19.
I do know you mentioned that enrollment was about -1%, but you're still doing kind of steady with enrollment?
Yeah, our enrollment, if you put it into context nationally, we're doing extremely well. All institutions, well, I shouldn't say most institutions suffered some enrollment decline, but even within the state, some institutions, it's been as great as 9%. And so we are fortunate that we're at just a little under 1% in enrollment decline that we have. And so our high was 6172. We're now at about 5,960. So down about 200 students, but in this environment, I think that is excellent.
Wow. And we talked a lot about the challenges which are financial mainly. If you could address that. I know you said the need for human capital and
sure.
You really.
Yeah, one of the biggest institutional challenges has to do with finances because it drives a lot of what we do. So for example, in the infrastructure arena, we still need, in spite of all the work we've done, the new construction we have, the significant numbers of buildings that we have renovated, there's still a need for a new student union building on the campus. And there's also a need for a new STEM research center. We are at Alabama A&M University, the leading minority STEM producer in the state of Alabama. But to continue doing that, we're going to have facilities that allow us to compete and to have the research capabilities going forward. On the human capital side, there is a tremendous need to replace human capital. Over 50% of our faculty and our staff are at retirement age, or they have met the number of years they need to retire under the Alabama retirement system. Well, that's going to require that we find ways to replace those faculty. And again, going to an area that we're a leader in, and that's the STEM area, that's very high cost. So you're not going to be able to address that simply from the standpoint of those dollars that you have within the coffers of the university from the state in tuition and fees. One way of doing that is through creating endowed chairs. And with those endowed chairs, you're able to augment and the salaries and offer those salaries so that you can compete and get persons that you need. You're not going to be able to do cybersecurity and artificial intelligence because you need to pay faculty. And you aren't talking about faculty that come cheap, plus replace the ones that are now at retirement age or moving forward. So that becomes a challenge. The other challenge is in our student arena. We serve a clientele of students where 70% of them are on Pell Grant. And of that 70%, over half of those come from families whose expected family contribution is zero. So how do you make up the difference when Pell Grants only provide about 1/3 of the cost here at the institution? So you got 2/3 of the cost that you still need to find a way to cover. Some states do that, Tennessee, Georgia, and et cetera. They have funding that comes from the lottery so that they're able to offer need-based scholarships and scholarships to help make up the difference. We need something similar to that here, in Alabama so that we can provide for students the resources they need to complete their education. When you look at our graduation rate, it is not where we'd like it to be. But one of the driving factors is that students just don't have the dollars and resources that's necessary for them to come back to the institution. And so there is that gap. And sometimes they don't make it back at all. And so if we had those dollars, then of course that would allow us to be able to address that. And so those are some of the financial challenges. Now, as indicated, it's going to take a lot of people working together to address them. Yes, there's some things we can do institutionally, but we need help from the private sector to make those kinds of investments. It would be good, for example, if we could have got the $50 million grant from McKinsey Scott that we could then create, in that regard, create an endowed scholarship for students to help make up the shortfall that students have. It's going to require the state working with us to try to address some of those costs relative to not only faculty, but also the cost relative to construction. And the federal level, hopefully in some of the infrastructure bills that are being considered, there's monies for HBCUs so we can create and address the need for buildings such as the STEM center that we have on the campus. So those are some of the financial challenges.
Okay, last couple questions. I know we're on a timeline now. You mentioned that your biggest highlight was seeing students graduate. Yeah.
Certainly, because when you think about it, the receipt of that degree is transformational not only for that student, but also transformation for that student's family. When you think about the fact that 70% of the students are coming from and receiving Pell Grants, so the degree immediately transitions them from one socioeconomic standard to another. They now are able to move into the middle class. And as they move into the middle class, so does that family move into the middle class. And so that becomes the highlight. That's what we're about. It's about improving lives through the power of education. And so that always becomes the highlight when I see them coming in as freshman students and then later departing with the degree in hand and going out and changing the world.
Excellent. And then just a brief explanation about the new incoming president. And you were explaining about there really wasn't a process, but they elected. If you could just touch on that.
Sure. So if you look at the statute that creates the institution, it says that the Board of Trustees appoints. It didn't say the Board of Trustees has a process by which to do it. It just says that they appoint a president. And so that's all that legislatively by statute they're required to do. And there are institutions in the state that have elected to do just that, just appoint the president. This board decided that they would have a different kind of process. So they engaged a search firm and they had a search committee. The search committee went through applications narrowed those applications down. They then went further, had interviews with those persons that they were considering, narrowed it further, and they ended up then with the finalists, and then the finalists were ultimately, they were interviewed by the board, and the board made a decision as to who the next president is going to be. And as I said earlier, you know, I'm biased and a little personal in this regard, because you're talking about a person that I've known for 15 years. He's worked with me here for over 11 years. Much of the success that you see here at Alabama A&M University, he's a part of that success, a part of that team. Well qualified. They couldn't have identified a better person to replace Andrew Hugine here at the helm. But I quickly tell people that there's Andrew Hugine and then there's Daniel Wims. There's not a comparison. We see things differently, different vision for the institution. What I can tell you is that he's well qualified. What I can tell you is he loves education. He loves this institution. He has a passion for this institution. And with that, there's no question about what the institution is going to be able to do. But I quickly want people to understand that Andrew Hugine's tenure as president of this institution ends on December 31st of 2021.
Okay, thank you. Retirement, you're going to spend more time with family, you're going to travel some.
Definitely. The schedule is already made out. As I've indicated, you know, my wife has been with me for 49 years, it'll be in December 23rd, made tremendous sacrifices. She has just been phenomenal in terms of working as a partner and advancing this institution. And so it's time now for me to work with her to do some of the things that she wants to do. And she loves to travel. We have covered 47 of the 50 states, and so we still have Oklahoma, North and South Dakota that we'll need to visit in the summer, as I don't do winter visitations. And she has done 5 of the 7 continents. Those continents left are Australia and Antarctica. I will travel with her to Australia. I will not go to Antarctica, and she knows that. That's not going to happen. I don't care for the cold weather. Then I have 2 wonderful children and their spouses, and then the love of our lives are our 3 grandchildren. That's Amir, who's 8, Nyla, who's 5, and Kal-El, who will be 1 in December. And so we want to become full-time grandparents and spend all the time we can with them. We hear from them all the time. They'll call, check on us. You know, how's grandmommy, how's granddaddy doing? And so we're just anxious to be able to go and be able to stay for whatever period of time necessary, and then we can return after doing that.
Beautiful. I know you are so looking forward to that. Thank you so much again for taking the time out. And I just want to make sure I clarify that before Alabama A&M University, you did about 4 years at your alma mater.
That's correct. I was president at South Carolina State for 4.5 years, which is my alma mater. So if you take the 4.5 years at South Carolina State and the 12.5 years here, I think that comes out to be 17 years that I've had the pleasure and the honor and the privilege of serving as president. And I say that, I don't say it lightly, because everyone does not get the opportunity to serve in this position. And when you do, it's an honor. And it's an honor that there are not many that have the privilege of doing so.